Pursuant to order, I now call Senator Ludlam to make his first speech and ask honourable senators that the usual courtesies be extended to him. I call Senator Ludlam.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we meet on the traditional lands of the Ngunnawal people and by paying my respects to the custodians of culture and country. After sorry comes the other S word, sovereignty over this island continent that was never ceded by the traditional owners. The tent embassy just down the hill is one visible reminder of the depth of the unfinished business still before this parliament. I'm the 5th Green senator that Western Australians have dispatched to Canberra. 4 strong women led the way in here, which is a wonderful political lineage. In 1984, Jo Valentine won the first seat in any parliament in the world on a platform of nuclear disarmament. I'm delighted to acknowledge Jo's presence as a mentor and friend in the public gallery tonight, and to use this occasion as a dedication to carry forward your work to set these weapons to rest once and for all. Jo was followed by Christabel Chamarette and then Dee Margetts, who carried the load of balance of power in here for several eventful years. And more recently, Senator Rachel Siewert joined an expanded Greens team with Senators Brown, Milne and Kerry Nettle, who was greatly missed in here. I had the extraordinary good fortune to work for Rachel in the Senate office for 2.5 years, and I know many senators also appreciate Rachel's special brand of passion and tenacity, and I really thank you for the opportunity that you gave me to support your work in here. I can't go past this opportunity to also thank Robin Chappell and the rest of the wonderful Greens WA team. Robin is the once, and has just been announced, future MP for the mining and pastoral region of Western Australia, who mentored me through 4 good years on the road, during which time I discovered a lot about my home state. I'm very proud to be here this evening representing the state of Western Australia. Not just the 100,000 Green voters who sent me here, but everyone who holds aspirations for an economy that serves the community and protects our spectacular environment. And this is the theme of what I wanted to say tonight. I grew up in the back of a van which was somewhere different every day, with my loving and generous parents, Graham and Jude, who I'm really happy are here tonight, and my dear brother Glenn, who's going to be a father in a matter of a few weeks. So my earliest childhood memories, after distant impressions of New Zealand, are of Indian backroads, London snow and African railways. But since the age of 8, I've lived in Perth, and Western Australia has been a good place to call home. It's a place that's been kind to me, and I love the prospect of being able to give something back at a time like this. My central preoccupation and reason for being here is that I share with my Green colleagues the optimistic sense that Australia and the world is poised on the edge of a historic transformation, and I'm convinced that we are up to this challenge. We're surrounded by events that are just unremittingly bleak. In our relentless insistence on pursuing the fossil growth economy, the industrialised nations have melted the North Polar ice cap. It happened 100 years earlier than the world's most sophisticated computer models said that it would, and so now within a year or two there will be no summer sea ice at all. That 8 million square kilometre mirror was reflecting a lot of sunlight back into space, and that was keeping the Arctic Ocean cold enough to hold the Greenland ice sheet together in one piece. And you know, we really need it to stay that way. And instead, it's coming apart so fast that there's now a discernible tenor of panic creeping into reports from frontline climate scientists. There's 2.8 million cubic kilometres of ice perched above sea level there, and a similar amount impounded in the West Antarctic ice sheet, where the situation is just as fragile and changing just as rapidly. Mr. President, humankind has kicked over the first domino. It begins with the vanishing sea ice, and if we get the next 100 months wrong, it ends with something in the order of a 5-metre sea level rise this century. The death of the barrier reef, the passing of ecosystems all over the world, and the combustion of the Amazon rainforest as the carbon cycle goes into reverse. To any climate sceptics whose company I've joined this evening, I say I celebrate scepticism. Without scepticism, we'd probably still be living in caves. Denial, on the other hand, has now brought humankind to the edge of something almost unthinkable. I also wish this wasn't happening to our battered little planet, but it is. It's time for determined, intelligent, coordinated action. In a perverse twist, the northern ice melt has touched off a mad scramble to peg the Arctic seafloor for oil and gas acreage, an example of market forces at work, which I would find darkly satirical if the stakes weren't quite so high. I imagine historians of the future looking back on this time as the beginning of the oil endgame, the age in which Australia sleepwalked along behind a tiny handful of powerful nations armed with nuclear weapons into a disastrous occupation of Iraq, with the singular objective of cornering the world's shrinking reserves of cheap oil. China's behaviour in Burma and Sudan and Russian aggression in Georgia flow from this same terrible imperative. And so now there are more than 6 billion people sharing the globe, 1/3 of them children. More than half of us now live in cities, with fully 1 billion crowded together in simmering slum encampments. All of us, to a greater or lesser degree, are bound together unknowingly in near total dependence on fossil fuel, fossil agriculture and fossil architecture. This fossil economy knows only how to grow. It has to be larger this year than it was last year, lest its debts and contradictions collapse upon itself and people's lives and careers get crushed in the wreckage. When our economy fails to grow, we call it a recession. But an entity that knows only blind growth, we call a cancer. The fossil growth economy gives us pulp mills that erase ecosystems while showering its neighbours with toxic emissions. It gives us the tragic industrial vandalism of the Ice Age heritage on the Burrup Peninsula. It gives us the expansion of uranium mining to feed the 436 plutonium factories that we know as nuclear power stations. It gives us burnout, family breakdown, fly-in, fly-out workforces. It gives us an industrial relations system that sought to treat working Australians as components to be deployed and discarded like any other business asset. Can you believe that we live in a country that throws away $5.3 billion worth of food a year and now dumps 40 million tonnes of waste each year? Our greatest tragedy is to imagine that this is the only kind of economy there is. My favourite author, William Gibson, observes that the future is here. It's just not widely distributed yet. What would a closed-loop conserver economy look like if it became widely distributed? One in which every industrial output became an input for something else in cradle-to-cradle product cycles. One in which chemical toxins were not proliferated under voluntary industry codes but designed out of the system entirely. An economy under democratic control which resumed its role as an essential subset of exchange and allocation within our community, rather than this blind growth machine which is asset stripping the biosphere. What would our economy look like if we substituted the frenzied incineration of our finite energy base with the limitless and infinite flows of renewable energy? Most importantly, what would our economy look like if we erased the degrading word consumer from our vocabulary and took back our power as citizens of this wonderful country which has so much to offer the people of the world?